project. It's a simple metaphor that sums up the core principle of academic, namely that the work we do is built upon that of the scholars that came before us to allow us to know more and to see further. Imagine these puzzle pieces represent our knowledge of a particular subject, say evolution. Our understanding now is built upon the work of those that came before. Take Charles Darwin, for example. His work on the origin of the species, published in 1859, is widely regarded as the foundation of evolutionary biology. And because he conducted his work in an academic manner, making his sources and references transparent, explaining his methodologies and how he came to his conclusions, other scholars have been able to build upon that, expanding his theories and our understanding, as well as challenging them. And that isn't just limited to the one subject. There are thousands of giants that have developed ideas that we build upon. Take the story of Genesis in the Old Testament of the Bible, for example. That provides a very alternative view of evolution, that the world was created in 6 days. And other scholars have built upon that over time, developing theories like intelligent design and creationism. So try to keep this metaphor in mind at any point of an academic research project. Your project should not just be regurgitating the work of those that came before. We don't need someone else to just tell us what Darwin already has. You should be adding an original interpretation and your views. At the same time, we don't need it to be so original that it ends up here, adrift of any of the research and scholarship that has come before. A good research project will look at the work of previous scholars, will build upon that while adding original views and interpretations so that you get the opportunity to make an original contribution to the subject that interests you.
A research administration office is important for the institution because it's really the entity that facilitates and coordinates research activities at the institution. And if one thinks about a long-term involvement or investment in research or research outcomes, you must have an entity at the university that is available and well equipped to handle grants and research and coordination of individuals. Otherwise, what you will have is individual research activities from scientific investigators that may be spread around the university, taking on multiple roles. So for example, a principal investigator may also serve as finding their own funding opportunities or trying to figure out how to write the application, or what are the important components, or what are the policies and procedures of the funding agency, all on their own. So they're wearing multiple hats of an investigator and an administrator, and so they're a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of their expertise, which really doesn't bode well for the institution overall. So the Research Administration Office, or as we call it, the Office of Sponsored Programs, is really an important component if one wants to think about longevity, sustainability, coordination, accountability. So it's very key in terms of being involved in the bigger research enterprise.
Scientists are all going to be working on this one gigantic project, and examples of those are particle physics experiments where you need a huge amount of capital, and government funding is more towards more and more big science, and little science is kind of getting ignored. Small science is individual investigators or scientists thinking about an idea that is very risky. You still don't know whether it warrants $50 million worth of investment in terms of further scientific inquiry, but a little bit of money could go a long way. So when I visited Capitol Hill, I didn't feel that there was a lot of scientific ignorance going on, but more like political ideology as to how government funding and where government funding should be applied. So for example, when I described the project that we were working on at a time at UC Berkeley, and that was being commercialized by Department of Energy into a real company, some of the people that we met in Capitol Hill thought that government should not be in the business of funding companies to make products. They thought that venture capitalists should. And my response to that was, well, if you visit run-of-the-mill, Sand Hill Road venture capitalist in the Bay Area, they're mostly interested in social media kind of companies. Who's going to beat Facebook? Who's going to be the next Twitter? Who's going to be the next LinkedIn? Who's going to be the next Google, which has a huge advertising revenue? And so there's two things there. One is smaller projects that have a bigger impact and societal impact kind of get ignored. Also, niche technologies that we can build on for future things will not thrive, will go away. A lot of the things that we're reaping the benefit of today was because of the basic scientific research that we funded in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So if we stop doing that kind of funding by the government, after a while, we just won't have anything to build on top of. We'll just be advertising and to each other and connecting with each other on social media, and that's it. And that's not where we want to end up. So there is a role for government in terms of promoting scientific research for both the sake of scientific research and also for commercializing those scientific research. The government is the only entity that can take a slightly longer point of view in terms of these developments. But I think it's good for that to happen, because sometimes good ideas need a little bit of funding before they can become bigger ideas.
Good afternoon, it's Sandy Shellis with Environmental Coffee House. And this is who I was. I was in research for 20 years, which prompted me to do this live stream today. And I'm hoping that I don't have a problem because something happened with my all the things I had set up. So hopefully we won't have a problem. I don't know, but I'm glad you all joined me. This is what prompted me today. It said, let me see if this works. Okay. Please stop saying you researched it. You didn't research anything, and it's highly probable that you don't even know how to do so. Did you compile a literature review and write abstracts on each article? Or better yet, did you collect a random sample of each article? Or better yet, better yet, did you collect a random sample? Oh, things are not going good here. Of sources and perform an independent probability statistics on the reported results? No. Did you at least take each article one by one and look into the source? And that would be the author, publisher, and the funder. And then critique the writing for logical fallacies, cognitive distortions, and plain inaccuracies? Do you ask yourself why this source might publish these particular results? Did you follow the trail of references and apply the same source of scrutiny to them? No? Then you didn't fucking research anything. You read or you watched a video, most likely with little to no objectivity. You came across something in your algorithm manipulated feed, something that jived with your implicit biases and served your confirmation bias, and subconsciously applied your emotional filters and called it proof. So it was a harsh one, I know. But it really prompted me today to start thinking about all of this stuff, research, and how people, think of research. What is a researcher, really? And hello, everybody. Before I do this, I have to test something because I'm not sure if something's working. So give me a second. And do you see, I've got to wait a second to see my leg and see if you can see the, oh boy. Oh, you can see it. Okay, I have a problem, that's all, with my, good. This is good stuff. All right, then we can get ready. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about, again, who I was, not that one, who I was, 20 years in professional researcher. I was a professional HR, and I was a certified affirmative action professional, and I was a sponsored programs administrator, and I did grants, and I did a lot in my career. So I thought that this would be a perfect opportunity for me to share some knowledge, go through some websites, and discuss research. You know, what is a researcher? Now, a researcher, it's someone who conducts research and conducts it in an organized fashion. You know, it's an organized investigation. Okay, so principal investigators, that's a scientist, could be a college professor. Okay, usually it is. All right, so, but they're doing it like it's like a independent search of knowledge. Researchers want to establish, they want to establish facts, very many facts, and it can be academic research, which is what we're going to talk about, industrial research, private research. So there's different kinds of research, but I want to talk about the research I'm aware of. I know for me, you know, I thought it would be interesting. So what I'm going to start with is, I hope that this thing is up. You know, it was I had some problems with my my software, and I think I'm having a problem. I don't know what happened to my software. And I don't know what happened. It seems like things are closing, but I'm going to work on this because I wanted to, well, I lost the one I really liked, but I can, maybe I can look it up really quickly. But if not, it doesn't matter. I'll take the time we'll talk about research and who is a researcher, and I'll find it. While you guys are starting to think, well, do you really want to hear all this? But how many of you really know who is a researcher? And what does research mean? Really, really, really mean it. So I'm going to find this article that I had, and forgive me, guys. It was good. And I lost it. Something happened when I was setting this up, and this is not it. I'm looking, but anyhow, how are you, Raza and the Pink Barrio? I'm so glad you're all here. Maybe this was it. It was a good article, but it's probably not it. But I can actually use this one. Maybe I can use this one. Okay, let me go back, and I'm going to put me on little screen, and I'm going to bring up some things, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me because I screwed up the screen, but we'll look at this one. So, what is a researcher? If you're doing the kind of work and you're not sure if you qualify as a researcher or how advanced a researcher you are, this might help. So there's early stage researchers, and that's how, you know, you can be a researcher when you're in college, and even if you don't have a PhD, you can be a researcher. I mean, I'm a researcher. I was a researcher. I did a lot of things. I was a trainer, researcher, a lot of things. So actually, this wasn't the one I wanted. So I'm going to go to the next thing. And I lost, you know what? I lost what I really wanted, and I'm going to find it because it's not this one. And I have a feeling I can find this one. Grants.gov, because they have a they have a pretty good site. And I wanted to take you to Grants 101. So we established that we've established that we know what a researcher is. We're talking about research in an academic vein. We are talking about getting grants, and it's sponsored programs. You listened to the video I created so you could understand a little bit more, correct? All right. So I'm going to look and I'm going to show you through grants.gov. There are a lot of resources out there to help you. Now, in a university setting, let's say I'm a PI, principal investigator, but I'm also teaching classes. I'm a PhD. I want to look for something. And I know that my science, let's say I'm doing climate change research, there's something specific I need to look for. There's different ways to look for these things. But there's a grant life cycle, and there's different phases. There's the pre-award phase, there's the award phase, there's the post-award phase, and then this shows you all kinds of stuff for grants. And let's see if this opens. I don't know why things are not opening right for me. Grant cycle. Well, I guess it has, and then policies, eligibility, terminology, but nothing seems to be wanting to open. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we're going to go to Grants 101. Sorry, guys, I got nervous at the end, right when I was starting this. Hi, Vanessa Kitty. Hi, Choctaw Warrior. I got nervous because my screens are now different. So everything changed from the flick of a finger. I really don't know what I did, but here we go. So federal grants. We're really going to talk about public funding, like the National Institute of Health, which is in a shitstorm now because of Dr. Fauci. And this is all the stuff that has been on my mind. So a grant, it's a way that the government funds your ideas and your projects to provide public services and stimulate the economy. Grants support critical recovery initiatives, innovative research, and many other programs listed in the catalog of federal domestic assistance, which is called the CFDA. A grant is one of many forms of federal financial assistance. Now, federal financial assistance is a broad term when you refer to the various ways the U.S. government redistributes resources to eligible recipients. So this specific, I remember when they were building grants.gov, I was not in the pre-award department, but of course we worked very closely with each other because once somebody got an award, then it came to my office for all of the human resources needs, which was I paid the people, we hired the people, we did everything. We got them their benefits. We took care of their effort reporting, which was a federal requirement that the hours you work on a federal project are called effort. And there are a lot of ins and outs to this. I probably don't even need all the websites that I put up, but I'm going to anyway. So federal assistance, there's cooperative agreements from the federal agencies. Like, again, there's so many of them, and even state. My job, we had a lot of state money. We ran state programs, and it was pretty damn cool. We had a lot of New York State programs. We were probably the biggest of the research foundations that wasn't a gigantic university PhD system. My campus, we had a lot of money. So in the grant life cycle page, the pre-award phase is when you look for funding opportunities. And so you're saying to yourself, well, gee, I have, I'm interested in climate change. I'm specifically interested in how the bird, the common tern, how has this bird, and believe me, there was research on the common tern. This researcher was studying this particular bird because of this particular bird's ability to adapt to varying climates. At the time, if I can remember, I had to medically retire, so it's not easy to remember all this stuff. So you know what your interest is. You're in the psychology department, you are in the medical department, you're working with PhD students. There's just so many, see you later, Heidi. There's just so many different arenas in higher education, in academia, and in the United States. But again, it's not limited to the United States because universities, colleges, everywhere, we work with the world. The world is a small place in the research community. And it's not anything to be scared of because really the research community, no matter what country you're from, there was caring, there was collaboration, there was the ability to want to carry on in your particular area. It was really cool. I loved my career. So you find your funding opportunity announcement, and there's a various million ways you can find that, but this is Grants 101, and as I said, I remember when they were building this. But so you go through a lot. And if you're at a university, you go to an office, you can go to the pre-award office. They can help you, and it depends on your university. SUNY, State University of New York, our research foundation was a separate nonprofit, actually, that existed for SUNY, and we were set up in 1951 to administrate the university's grants, and it was much cleaner in our state to keep it separate. We were just a big entity of our own for the school, okay? So let's see this getting started checklist. So you have to, basically, you're with pre-award, you want to familiarize yourself with grants, life cycles, look at your eligibility for these, identify the right type of funding opportunities. Now, that's not always easy because a lot of people in state universities will go for public funding, but it all depends. There's private funding too, which I'm going to show you. You learn about the reporting requirements, which there are so many. You confirm that you're eligible to even apply for the grant. You register with grants.gov or whoever you're working with. All right, so that was and now I'm taking you to the NIH page, which I have no idea why these pages got all screwed up. Honestly, I'll have to figure all this out. I probably should have rebooted the computer. But as long as you can hear me and you're enjoying this, I'm glad. Let me check you all out. Are you enjoying the show? Okay, good. Let me go back to my stuff. All right. So NIH, National Institute of Health, which is controversial to people that don't understand how these processes go and how research goes. NIH is the largest public funder of biomedical research in the world, and they invest more than $32 billion a year to enhance life and reduce illness and disability. NIH-funded research has led to breakthroughs and new treatments, helping people live longer, healthier lives, and building the research foundation that drives discovery. So you can read on. All right, so there again, the process. There's steps before getting started. You want to learn, and that's where a sponsored programs office, specifically the pre-award office, helps you because they know all the rules and regulations and laws governing each different sponsoring entity. So basically, you're applying for a sponsored program because you are you're getting sponsored for your research. I mean, and there's all kinds of research. You know, I mean, there's research. Oh my God, we won't even get to that. But it's not a waste of money, because as you saw in the video that I prepared, that research projects, especially in the sciences, well, even in the social researches, they piggyback off each other. So all the research that came, it's kind of like case law. Case law is the same thing. You have a case, you research in law, you're researching the cases, you're researching the statutes, you're researching everything that came before so you can establish your case. Research, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not going to replicate someone else's research unless someone else's research had found, problems with the statistical analysis or whatever. However, you're just building off all the other research all over the world. It's so fascinating. It's just so fascinating. So for NIH, there's a whole thing about applying. And I'm going to tell you, it is not easy, because a lot of the time you go through this, it's a lengthy process, and you have to typically have a relationship already with the funding institution, and you have to have a relationship with the academic institution, unless you're in a private lab or a private entity. And I'm not here to do that today. We're going over university, and I'm just looking to see what you guys are. Listen, if you're going to talk about that, I was going to do something at the end. If you all talking about Chris Martenson. Well, yeah, and him using the Newsweek article. And I told you in my last stream, look behind, do the research, really look at the motivations and look at the intent of Newsweek article. All right. So the pre-award and post-award processes, that's where you are. I worked in post-award, but pre-award is where it all happens to get the grant. And it's very, very interesting, I think. Let me see on the NIH page if there is. No, I'm going to go back to the NIH page, and I want to show you their overall. Okay, so they have the how to apply, find funding, funded research report. They have everything that I showed you: forms, library, policy, and compliance. Now, research is so hard in compliance. And it is not easy. It is not like Dr. Fauci, who I don't even know if he could do this, just said, okay, there's this pot of money and I'm just giving it to the Wuhan lab. He can't. There are so many layers you have to go through before this federal money gets transferred to anyone. And the principal investigator, who is the lead, might have a co-principal investigator, who knows. But on that side, there has to be a proposal that has been approved by the feds before any of this money gets transferred. And there's a lot of different kinds of transfers. You can get money up front to start your research, because if, let's say, you don't have equipment, you can do it that way, or you can do the research and then the institution bills and you get paid back for it. So basically, the institution, they can backstop a grant, program. They can backstop the research if they have the money, which means that the institution puts it up first. So compliance and oversight is huge. It's huge. I've been audited. I can't tell you. Every single year in payroll and HR, we got audited every single year because we had a lot of federal money. State was a little different, but when you have federal money, you're going to be audited, and there's a lot you have to follow by. It is not easy. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not easy. The Division of Grants Compliance and Oversight is the focal point to advance external compliance with policy and legislative mandates and enhance compliance oversight by recipient institutions. They also assure and evaluate the efficient and effective management of the extramural resources. Now, this is just the NIH. I mean, there's the EPA. There are just so many. These are there's federal requirement references. Now, of course, we're talking about the institutions of higher education, and in a pre-award here, it is so much stuff. The federal award requirements and contents of federal awards. You got to know your shit, okay? And that's why having a sponsor programs office like I was in is so critical to research being successful, okay? Because scientists and principal investigators, while a lot of them become very savvy in understanding all the rules, they don't always want to do all the well, they're certainly not paying. We do that. And what the sponsor programs office does for hiring personnel when you get your grant, and if it's federal grants, you have to follow affirmative action. It's just so much. So there are different kinds of grant agreements, fixed amount awards, cooperative agreements in these different kinds of contracts. You can pay you can pay several partial payments, like I said, but there's just a lot there before you even start your research. And this is just Health and Human Services, which is over the National Institute of Health. All right. So under the HHS, Health and Human Services, under that is an awarding agency name. So Health and Human Services may have, I don't know who's under them, a couple of them, funding opportunity title. And this is when they're making the announcement. This is before they, even know exactly what they need. And you know what? The NIH, they will, look at that. This is part 75, uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for HHS awards. There's certifications in this. My friend had the certification, and it was no walk in the park to do that. It took her a long time, and these are people that are highly educated. So that's that website. And I want to look for the Research Foundation website. That's who I worked for. Okay, so for some reason, everything got pretty screwy. I'm going to come back on again and see you for a second before we go on to the next thing. So how are you all doing over there? Are you enjoying this process of learning that grants are not so easy and there's a lot of multiple layers? Let's see. Jean's talking, and okay. I'm glad you're all getting excited. I hope you are, because I'm enjoying it. And yes, Martinson did present scientific evidence because he does his homework. I just wish he hadn't relied on the Newsweek article so much, because Newsweek, I don't think, is a credible source. I really think that there's something behind them. Okay, so let's go back to the website. And I was going to show you the RF SUNY website. So let's see. They have funding opportunities. And I guess I don't know how everything got so screwy. So this is SUNY RF. I'll go back here. This is the page that is where I worked. And I'm waiting to see if I can see how it looks on for you guys because of the lag. The SUNY RF, cutting edge. We had a lot of wonderful projects. And I wasn't at the biggest school. I wasn't at the University Medical School. They're a whole thing in themselves. And I see we really have a lag, and I don't see that you're seeing what I'm seeing. I hope this is working, because I I put a lot into this, and I don't see that it's giving you let me change this. All right, let's see. Can you see the page now? All right, well, normally, this is very, okay, let's see, guys. Can you see? Oh, finally it's working. Sorry, one woman show. All right, this is where I worked 20 years in Buffalo. SUNY Research Foundation. It was a fabulous job that I absolutely was blessed to have. And there's a lot of different kind of research at the school up there, but there's research foundations in every single SUNY campus, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of SUNY campuses. Okay, so I will go to policies, procedures, and forms. The policies are insane, but I was in human resources, so we had a lot of information you always had to understand, and what the hell did that form come from? Okay, we're not going to go there. I'm jumping ahead. I wanted to find the tools for our work, what we do. And SUNY, the Research Foundation, again, private nonprofit, they work with academic and business leadership of SUNY campuses to support research and discovery through administration of sponsored projects and transfer and sharing of intellectual property for public benefit and economic growth. So the Research Foundation supports SUNY with a central infrastructure of people, and I was one of them, technology and processes that enable faculty to write and submit grant proposals to agencies, foundations, and companies, establish contracts, and manage funding that is awarded to run campus-based research projects, protect and commercialize intellectual property created within these projects, and promote transparency and accountability through the whole process. And let me tell you, I worked in my office, hey, let's see this video. I didn't see this. No, it's asking me to save it, so I'm not gonna watch it. So Sponsored Programs Administration was, of course, after, but it has a life cycle too. And I think SUNY kind of takes the RF and the NIH and the HHS. They don't reinvent the wheel. They sometimes follow each other's conventions. But this is, again, what NIH was saying. Identify the funding. You have to budget. I've written grants. I've written budgets. I manage budgets. I've done grants accounting. And I kept working myself into different parts of the process. So I really have pre-award and post-award experience. It's really a drag that because of my bad back that I had to retire. This is my passion here. And then, becoming a climate change commentator afterwards, because I reinvented myself yet once again in my life, which is just something that is, we can all do. Well, so you submit your proposal, and the PI is ready to prepare the proposal. We assisted in many ways with all of that stuff. Developing the proposal narrative was very important because you submit a proposal and it goes through a peer review to even get the money. So let's say the NIH, and I'm going to show you a couple of different grants that Research Foundation people could apply for. And but what we did in managing the award at the university, and what the Sponsored Programs Office does, we bill the sponsors for payments. We hire people to work on the project, buy equipment and supplies, running the payroll for the project, managing the project's finances, identifying, disclosing, and protecting any intellectual property created during the project. And as we carried out the function, there's a report center. And I remember, let me tell you, I came when there was a legacy system from like they used in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I was a subject matter when we went to Oracle. We built a huge system. And the first project was the year 2000 when we thought that we were going. That was insane. Okay, so we had to go through every business project process. And when you go through your business processes, I mean, these are like bullet points of every single thing that you do in your specific field. So you as a PI, I remember when they developed the PI Report Center, because the principal investigators did not always have access to the system back then. So they really relied on us. And I would keep the budgets of several of our PIs because they either didn't have the money or the staff. And I was one of those workers that I would go in early and leave late, but I still rode my Harley on Fridays in the good weather. And I changed into a business suit when I came into the office. So there's all kinds of things that the university will do to help. Okay. I wanted to find sponsor programs funding. All right. So again, there's so many different kinds of databases. And here I wanted to go over the public funding sources. All right. This was grants.gov, which I showed you in the beginning. And they have like information, more than 1,000 grant programs. And they give out, well, they don't give it out, but they get these places $400 billion in annual awards. Research makes the world go round. And I want people to realize it's not simple, but it's not nefarious. And what's going on in comment sections on YouTube just makes me want to cry, because I'd say 90% of those people do not understand research and how it works. So there's the American Association for the Advancement of Science. There's the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance. There's Proposal Central. There's state government. Now in the New York State, we had the New York State Foundation for Science, Technology, and Innovation. New York is pretty cool. We had on our campus, we did everything. We hired trainers for a program called CDHS, Center for Development of Human Services, but we also implemented computer systems for the state. So when we would get a grant or funding from the state, it would start. Let's say, okay, here's an example. New York State is having a real problem with the unemployment database, okay? 2017, they knew that it needed work. Well, what the state would do was bid out, and usually our school at that length of time, which was about 15 years, we would get these grants and we would hire all over New York State. We would hire the staff. We would get, the project had a PI, but each project, this was one project which had lots of other projects. We built databases for many health department programs. So we necessarily wouldn't build a database for unemployment, but I'm trying to give you the basis to maybe understand it a little bit. But we built databases, and this was all under our campus, just one campus of how many campuses in New York State. So New York's they have, well, I don't know if there's going to be much money anymore. The state's operating on a deficit. Now, there's also private funding sources, but the private funding was usually handled by a different department on campus. That was like charitable giving, things like that. And then here's the searchable databases. InfoEd was a big one. Spin searches, this one that I'm pointing to, these have been around forever. Okay, spin searches, and of course, as technology got better, the ability to find the money you're looking for got better. When I was writing grants, I was working on a project called on the Center for Worksite Health. And actually, I was in health promotion at that time before human resources. And we were doing a project for New York State Department of Health we developed a tool called Heart Check, and we would administer Heart Check to employees. We were very interested in worksite health promotion because we felt that if we could show companies the value in offering their employees health programs that would, in the long run, we hoped would lower their costs, because in employer-sponsored healthcare, the costs are really insane. They're quite insane. And so we were trying to improve employees' health while improving a corporation's bottom line because of the cost of benefits. And that was back in the 90s. This was the early 90s, and it was expensive then. So Heart Check would do was it was a tool, and I helped develop it, and I've been published in journals with the two professors I worked with, and we would give this test, this survey to the company, and we worked with the HR people. So I was working with human resources people, which was when I said, wow, I really like this. But it was like a pre and post. And then what we would do is we would offer and this was social science, not hard science. We would offer then a series of trainings to the staff of these companies that were the people, the decision makers that could look and find the budget to implement worksite health promotion programs for employees. And we were huge into this. It was a big thing. It was a huge thing, and I loved it. And we used to compete. We had this thing called Battle of the Businesses in Buffalo, and we used to compete in all kinds of games. And, a lot of great things went on in that part of my life. So you get to see, you understand that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you. Now, here is a funding initiative that is open to all research foundation people, PIs, that are, let's say, in the medical schools. And so many people say that Bill Gates and their foundation, while they may be, very capitalistic, I'm not going to join on the bandwagon that Bill Gates is a horrible, nefarious, person that wants to take over the world, Agenda 21, and is into global depopulation. I'm not. They have a foundation. They have a lot of money. And this was to build a COVID-19 therapeutics accelerator. Anybody at SUNY could then they could do that. So they could go in and they could where is the see, now I can't find where I was. It was really cool, and it showed maybe it's in it. It showed all of the grants that were available. And this is not where I wanted to go. So I really did lose what I was going to show you. All right, let's see if I can find it. If I can find the page. Okay, bear with me because it's really interesting, and the policies, procedures, and forms may take me to finding Sponsor Programs Administration. Bear with me. I used to know this, let me see if pre-award has. No pre-award. All right. I guess I'll just have to tell you about it. Information. What I'm looking for is the page that gives you access to all kinds of grants that you can apply for. It's a great page. Here it is. COVID-19 funding opportunities. And I don't know how long I've been on for a while. COVID-19 research opportunities. So you're a medical researcher. You can go in and say, well, I want to do such and such. I have the expertise to do this. I'm going to assemble a team. I'm going to write a grant. And this was the grant. So grants.gov, they have tons of grants. Now, I did not do any basic search criteria, but right here I just put coronavirus in, right? It was in before. Look at all the opportunities, 2, 3. So, and most of them go to, most of these are universities will apply for these. So let's see, I'll give you an example. Distance learning and telemedicine. Now we know right now with this coronavirus that schools are closed and the government relies on universities to help and use their expertise to work with public officials to implement what has to be done. So eligible applicants in this case are private institutions of higher education or for-profit other than small business, state government, city or town. So this one is it has a good scope. This one is looking for it's kind of like a business mixture. I don't know. That's the synopsis anyway, but that's what, so you can look for anything that fits. Here's one. Higher education, emergency relief fund, tribally controlled colleges and universities. And here's another one they want to, it's through the CARES Act, the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. So you go to the website but our website took us there, the grants.gov. And there's, again, so many of these. And I don't want to keep repeating myself. So this was just one. And you could apply for, and it's not like one person, one university is going to get $50 million. This is $50 million from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and MasterCard. I guess they have a foundation, these are the capitalist grant givers. And, but if they're going to have seed money like this, seed funding, they spread it around like a seed. They spread it around. It's not going to be just one institution. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to go to is, okay, you're a researcher. You've got a global project. You're working with China, let's say. You're working with, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, any country. We had people all over. I don't know what it's like now with the Trump administration. I left before Trump got in, thank God. So our policies were strict. There were there were a lot of restrictions on transfer of information and materials to foreign countries. And there's a whole, this is just one document of many. Technical transfer is a big thing. And the Export Administration Act and its associated regulations, the Export Administration regulations are administered by the Department of Commerce, believe it or not. So you cannot just send a virus to Wuhan. I mean, there's just so much you have to go through. And we had the policy of management of patents and inventions through our university. There's the intellectual property. So this is just a little snippet of some of these things. I want to show you again. Here's another one. This is after you get the grant. Now, this is what I went through every single year because we had federal grants. We were the operating location. We went through compliance reviews, which was an examination of everything, basically, that we were adhering to the sponsor's administrative and fiscal policies, study protocol, and contract terms. And you got fined, and you could lose your ability to be able to get more sponsor programs if you screw up, basically. The checks and balances are insane, okay? It is not a fly-by-night thing here. So I was at an operating location of the Research Foundation. The sponsor was the organization that provided funding. The sponsor had an auditor. They could audit. We got audited internally by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, every year. And we would, well, when I first started, we had paper files, and then we went through the whole cleaning of, I don't know, 50 years of files. 40 something years of files, where I had to hire students to take the staples out and literally clean all the stuff. And we hired a company that scanned everything in. So then we had a new database. I mean, when I say my 20 years was started out where there was a very DOS-based rudimentary system. We went to Oracle, several updates in Oracle, because Oracle built us an incredibly intense module-based system so that all of the modules could talk to each other for one program. So that at the end, when all of the reports were due to the federal government or the sponsoring agency, each system talked to one another, which didn't always happen. So when you have an audit, there will be an entrance conference, and everybody goes in and sits around the table, and it's like, it kind of makes you feel a little intimidated, I think. I wasn't always, because I knew my shit and my staff was good. Entrance conference, they keep asking you for stuff. They assist with compiling relevant documentation, status meetings, ongoing discussions of audit findings that may lead to significant deficiencies or disallowances in program costs. That means if you screw up, they're going to say, well, we're not going to give you this much money, and the campus is on the hook for it. And then there's an ending conference, exit conference, and a findings follow-up. So it is a very, it's not an easy process. And I am looking for the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I know this is going long, was the rules here. And I was also on the export control team, and export controls was a big thing going into the mid 2000s. And that was above and beyond HR duties. So we were subject to export controls and not always having a license. But what I want to go down to, so you don't get really confused, because it is confusing, and this is like, I'm going through a lot of material to show you that university research is not easy. Okay, here. When you needed a license or approval, if you had to ship abroad or hand carry research equipment, which we had a project that was in Vietnam, and our geologist was going, and his program and his research dollars were spent in treating sewage and trying to eliminate the pollution and the runoff from the city sewage systems into the waterways, because it was pretty gross. But he had to bring stuff, and especially if you're bringing, which our school didn't have biological samples really, and if he did, it was just, well, no, he might have. You plan to disclose a sponsor's controlled proprietary information to a foreign national in the U.S. So now, even in your lab, that could be an H-1B visa scientist we brought over. I used to write the H-1B visas. I used to bring over scientists. I have such experience in this field that it overwhelms me 5 years later from retiring because of my back that I'm starting to, it comes to me because I really, really liked it. And so I brought the visas. I did the visas until we hired a law firm because we kept growing and then I couldn't handle all of it. But you have to have presenting. If you're presenting information at an international symposium or a meeting that is not open or limits registration or note taking, those are more I don't know, maybe not as much of a public venue. But so you see, there's just so many things. And this is from the federal government, okay? Foreign nationals would be in your lab. They could be students. They could be H-1B visa researchers that came over to work with us. And we had a lot of those. And that was a whole bunch of hoops to jump through when I was doing those. So, as you see, nothing is easy in the research field. Nothing. And I'm going to come back to just me because we've been on for quite a while. And again, I'm going to show you that for those of you who have never seen this, that this was me. And I was an integral part of research in a university system. I traveled a lot. I had a good life. I traveled a lot. I had a good salary. I had opportunity. I had certifications. I was privileged. And I learned so much. I even had to do the affirmative action plan. My job changed over the years. As we grew, we changed over the years. But it's just an extremely interesting field. And I don't think people realize the intricacies and the checks and balances. I mean, you do something wrong. Like that guy, I don't know what his name is, but he just got arrested or something's going on with him. I don't know if he was from Harvard. I don't know if it's a witch hunt by this administration so that they can vilify our research with China. We've done tons of research with China. We've done tons of research with Russia. We've done tons of research with every country in the world that does research. So this is not, a lot of this is not out of the ordinary. But when politics comes in to play, and it often did, but when politics comes into play, it can get ugly. And I think that's what's going on because we're in an anti-science administration. We have an anti-science wave going through the United States and the world. And it's very distressing to me, okay? It is extremely distressing to me. I'm an academic. My allegiance is with research. Maybe that's why I work so hard to tell you guys that you cannot believe everything you see out there. And it's very easy to be misled. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Maybe a couple of comments. Yeah, I will tell you, this is a good comment from Richard. Some folks had opportunities, doors knocked on. I started as a $5 research assistant, mother of a little one, going back to school after being a bartender for 20 years. I was married and I got opportunity because the professor that I worked for $5 an hour, Dr. Blodgett, said sometimes one of the best things, and I was a psychology major then, one of the best things you can do for someone is give them a job. He gave me a job. He changed my life. He completely changed my life. Pink Barrio says the dark ages are coming back. Yes, that's in reference to science, and that we can't turn back. and it's funny, through the administrations I worked through, the Bush administration, I remember each administration had less money for some things and more money for other things. Obama, we didn't have, I remember in the beginning of the administration, we didn't have the kind of cuts that we were getting towards the end. And again, I left, so, I left. I could use a martini. I know this is long. Let's be optimistic, Bio says. It might be, though, Bio, because science is the building block of everything, at least to me. It's the building block of everything. And bartending is a great research position. I will say that as a bartender and being a person that has the degrees in psychology and human, behavior and motivation and all, it was, I probably could write a PhD on that. And don't think I wasn't going to go on for a PhD, but I was working and I thought, well, what's it going to get me if I'm doing really well? And, at the time I didn't know my body would take a shit. So I hope to be able to come back with a little more of this and maybe go into specific types of research projects. And then what we haven't even done is talked about when the research project ends. So what happens during the beginning? What are you researching? Is it in a lab? Is it human subjects? That's a whole nother area, is when you're using human subjects. And at our institution, I was the only one we had to write, I wrote the HIPAA policy on our campus, essentially, for the Research Foundation, because we had privacy concerns in the work we were doing. That's when HIPAA was really starting to be a big thing, and privacy. So I think we'll come back and I'll follow this up, because I'm having a problem sitting, but I'll follow this up with another discussion, and we'll talk about the back end. We'll talk about the research papers. We'll talk about the presentations of the research papers. We'll talk about what they used to call in the old days poster board presentations, where all the researchers would stand around in the college gym with their poster board presentations of their work, which, who knows? I don't know if they do it. And I see Void is with us. Hi, Void. I know your real name is Drew. He's a cool guy. But anyway, so I haven't seen that many people. I don't know who's watching from Facebook, but I multi-streamed this on purpose because I wanted to be able to get this information out there, and I tried to keep it succinct. It wasn't as succinct as I would have liked it, because my screens got messed up. I'm looking for another screen, a used screen, so I can have two screens and maybe upgrade. I can't afford to, but little by little, I can find things. Osama, he knows how to help me too. Osama number 5. So thank you. And I will do this again. We're going to do the back end. What happens afterwards, Okay? So I'm not going to play the video that I made, but because we've been so long, it's been 1 hour and 8 minutes. Unless a lot of you missed it, I can play it again if you want to see it. It's 7 minutes though. Oh, I'll play it. I'll say goodbye. I really thank you for coming. Yes, get 2 screens. I know I'm very rudimentary here. Okay, I have a green screen. That was a huge thing. But I really care about all of you, and I really appreciate that. I know, Chris Foster, your brain is resting, but when it comes to this area, it's my area of expertise, and I think we'll go next. And maybe I'll dig out the material that my research projects, and I wrote on sexual harassment. that's a whole nother one. I'm not going to go into that one, but it was because I was training all of the policies at the time, and I trained sexual harassment. And so I decided I would do a pre and post test of the knowledge of the trainees before and after my treatment, which was the training. But okay. Bye-bye. Have a great day. I am going to then play you the video I made. This is long, I know, and that means nobody's going to end up watching. Or watch it in two. I could even break it up into two. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. I gotta tell you, I haven't been feeling good, and these kind of things just make me feel better. Peace, guys.
Project. It's a simple metaphor that sums up the core principle of academic research, namely that the work we do is built upon that of the scholars that came before us to allow us to know more and to see further. Imagine these puzzle pieces represent our knowledge of a particular subject, say evolution. Our understanding now is built upon the work of those that came before. Take Charles Darwin, for example. His work on the origin of the species, published in 1859, is widely regarded as the foundation of evolutionary biology. And because he conducted his work in an academic manner, making his sources and references transparent, explaining his methodologies and how he came to his conclusions, other scholars have been able to build upon that, expanding his theories and our understanding, as well as challenging them. And that isn't just limited to the one subject. There are thousands of giants that have developed ideas that we build upon. Take the story of Genesis in the Old Testament of the Bible, for example. That provides a very alternative view of evolution, that the world was created in 6 days. And other scholars have built upon that over time, developing theories like intelligent design and creationism. So try to keep this metaphor in mind at any point of an academic research project. Your project should not just be regurgitating the work of those that came before. We don't need someone else to just tell us what Darwin already has. You should be adding an original interpretation and your views. At the same time, we don't need it to be so original that it ends up here, adrift of any of the research and scholarship that has come before. A good research project will look at the work of previous scholars, will build upon that, while adding original views and interpretations so that you get the opportunity to make an original contribution to the subject that interests you.
A research administration office is important for the institution because it's really the entity that facilitates and coordinates research activities at the institution. And if one thinks about a long-term involvement or investment in research or research outcomes, you must have an entity at the university that is available and well equipped to handle grants and research and coordination of individuals. Otherwise, what you will have is individual research activities from scientific investigators that may be spread around the university, taking on multiple roles. So for example, a principal investigator may also serve as finding their own funding opportunities or trying to figure out how to write the application, or what are the important components, or what are the policies and procedures of the funding agency, all on their own. So they're wearing multiple hats of an investigator and an administrator, and so they're a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of their expertise, which really doesn't bode well for the institution overall. So the Research Administration Office, or as we call it, the Office of Sponsored Programs, is really an important component if one wants to think about longevity, sustainability, coordination, accountability. So it's very key in terms of being involved in the bigger research enterprise.
Scientists are all going to be working on this one gigantic project. And, examples of those are particle physics experiments where you need a huge amount of capital, and government funding is more towards more and more big science. And little science is kind of getting ignored. Small science is, individual investigators or scientists thinking about an idea that is very risky. You still don't know whether it warrants $50 million worth of investment in terms of further scientific inquiry, but a little bit of money could go a long way. So when I visited Capitol Hill, I didn't feel that there was a lot of scientific ignorance going on, but more like political ideology as to how government funding and where government funding should be applied. So for example, when I described the project that we were working on at a time at UC Berkeley, and that was being commercialized by Department of Energy into a real company, some of the people that we met in Capitol Hill thought that government should not be in the business of funding companies to make products. They thought that venture capitalists should. And my response to that was, well, if you visit run-of-the-mill, Sand Hill Road venture capitalists in the Bay Area, they're mostly interested in social media kind of companies. Who's going to beat Facebook? Who's going to be the next Twitter? Who's going to be the next LinkedIn? Who's going to be the next Google, which has a huge advertising revenue? And so there's two things there. One is smaller projects that have a bigger impact and societal impact kind of get ignored. Also, niche technologies that we can build on for future things will not thrive, will go away. A lot of the things that we're reaping the benefit of today was because of the basic scientific research that we funded in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So if we stop doing that kind of funding by the government, after a while, we just won't have anything to build on top of. We'll just be advertising and to each other and connecting with each other on social media, and that's it. And that's not where we want to end up. So there is a role for government in terms of promoting scientific research for both the sake of scientific research and also for commercializing those scientific research. The government is the only entity that can take a slightly longer point of view in terms of these developments. And I think it's good for that to happen, because sometimes good ideas need a little bit of funding before they can become bigger ideas.